All right, thank you so much, guys, for coming today. We're on to material for the final exam. So we're going to discuss spinal cord, and we're going to do spinal reflexes at the end, and lecture 16. So things are moving right along. All right. I didn't do that. Okay, good. All right, spinal cord and reflexes. All right. So the spinal cord, of course, is part of the central nervous system, and you know that you get 31 pairs of spinal nerves coming on either side of it, supplying the peripheral nervous system, right? So we did that when we did the organization of the nervous system already. Okay. It participates in a little bit of integration and a little bit of processing of reflexes. Okay. That happen automatically. Okay, there could be some somatic ones, usually concerned with removing body parts from painful stimuli. Okay, or it could be automatic. Okay, controlled by the autonomic nervous system. All right. These reflexes, though, are edited by tracts going up to the brain, and the final instructions are given down to the spinal cord so that you can create a response. But those reflexes originate in the spinal cord. All right. So the spinal cord is several regions based on where anatomically it's located in the body. So you've got the cervical region, which is the neck. All right. And on that cervical region, you have the cervical enlargement, which is where the nerves for the upper limbs originate. So you can see the enlargements kind of coincide with where you have a lot of nerve coming out of the spinal cord. So the cervical enlargement will be, you see this enlargement here? That's what gives rise to the brachial plexus, which supplies the upper limbs. All right? And then there are also curvatures that we will see, if you're looking at it laterally, like the neck and the cervical region, and then the thoracic region, and also the lumbar region, where it tapers. All right, and then you could see also this lower region here, the lumbar region, where you have the lumbar enlargement. Of course, it's going to give rise to the nerves that supply the limbs, the lower legs, the legs. All right. So cervical in the neck, thoracic, of course, in the thorax, and then lumbar is the lower back. And then, of course, the sacral is the tail end. And the one of the characteristics of the spinal cord is that its length is shorter than the vertebral column. It doesn't span the whole length of the vertebral column. Okay. All right. So, and then when we, in the next lecture, I think we'll talk about how many nerves in each region, probably in this lecture. We'll talk about how many nerves, spinal nerves, come from each region. All right. So, like I was saying, this enlargement gives rise to the brachial plexus, which controls the upper limb, and this one right here controls the lower limb, lumbosacral plexuses. And we will talk about those nerves, plexuses in the next lecture. If you see the next lecture, it's called plexuses, spinal nerves, and so forth. So we'll talk about those. It's plexuses, which are arrangement of very complicated networks of the spinal nerves. Okay, so like we said, the spinal cord tapers into what is called the medullaris conus or medullary cone. All right, and in that enlargement here, right at the end, it kind of literally looks like this. Okay, so this is the medullaris conus right here, or medullary cone, if you like. Then there'll be nerves coming out of that. And it looks like what? It looks like the tail of a horse. So it's called cauda equina. Equine is to do with horses. So cauda is the back, so tail end. So it will look, spinal nerves will come out like that. And then it looks like the horse's tail. So that's why cauda is the tail of a horse. Okay? So that's what happens. All right? So sometimes in the exam I ask you to talk about these characteristics of the spinal cord, right? So that's what you talk about, all these enlargements in all these regions, and some of the specialized ends like the, the tapering end of it called the medullaris conus or medullary cone. So this is the coda equina, and kind of shows us this is an actual, kind of looks like the horse's tail. So that's why it's called coda equina. All right, and over there it's actually in the diagram you can see the representation. So it gives rise to from the spinal cord. You've got 31 spinal nerves coming out on each side. Okay, and the lumbosacral enlargement, like we talked about at the bottom, it gives rise to the nerves that control the lower limb. All right, and then of course the cervical enlargement in the neck gives rise to the nerves that control the arm. All right, and then of course the coda equina that we talked about, which is the tapering end, and it looks like the horse's tail. All right. So there's going to be 8 of them in the cervical region, spinal nerves. There's going to be about 12 in the thoracic region, all right, and 5 in the lumbar region, and then 5 in the sacral region. So that makes what? 30. So we need one more, and that's what's called the coccygeal one. See, the coccygeal one is not normally recognized as a region because there's only one nerve coming out of that. So we have got, the coccygeal with the 1, and then sacral, lumbar with 5 each. Thoracic, of course, is the longest region with 12, and the neck area 8. All right, and then it is the grouping of these nerves coming from each region. Okay, here and here, that are arranged into plexuses. Okay, these ones here, the 12, just go to the 12 intercostal spaces between the ribs, so they are not complicated networks. There's not a need for arrangement. But you can imagine the group of nerves going to control the upper limb, the arm. There's a lot of them, so they get grouped in bundles, like maybe C1 to C4, and then it's bundled as a plexus going to control, certain parts of the arm. Okay, and then like C3 or C4 to T1 will be controlling another group, so it will be another plexus, okay, brachial plexus and cervical plexus. Okay, so those are the only ones who will be forming the plexus. Okay, and we'll do that next time. Okay. All right. So, like I was saying earlier on, the spinal cord is shorter than the vertebral column, right? So it's one of the characteristics. It falls short of the vertebral column. All right? And you know the hole that the spinal cord goes through, right? On the vertebral foramen, right? Okay. On the vertebra, in the sense, the RCP. So good. So it's shorter than that. Okay, it falls short. All right. So 31 pairs of spinal nerves from the spinal cord. All right. So there we go. The spinal cord, as well as the brain, they are covered by very tough connective tissue membranes called meninges. So these meninges are continuous with the brain. But for now, we're talking here about them on the spinal cord. So the one on the outside is dura. Dura means hard. Okay, so the dura mater is the hardest, is the toughest, is the outermost, and it's a very tough connective tissue that when we dissect with the brain, you will see just how tough the dura mater is. Okay, so it's really tough. So the spinal nerves have to come out of that from the spinal cord. All right. So, and then the arachnoid mater is so called because it looks like a spider web. Arachnids are, the spiders. And it's the one in the middle. All right. So the dura mater is closest to the periosteum, or the outside, which is the membrane covering the bone, right? Remember, the periosteum covers the bone in the vertebral column. Okay, so normally the space So this is the spinal cord, and this is your vertebral column. Okay, and this is your vertebra right there, right? So this is your dura mater. The space above this, and I'll show you a nice picture. You see the space above this dura mater is got lots of fat in it, and it's what's usually called the epidural space. So if you're pregnant and you don't want to feel anything down there, they give you an epidural, right? They say, oh, I want an epidural. This is the space that they'll be administering that anesthetic, just above the dura mater, so that you don't feel anything down there. Okay? So, and I'll show you that space later on in a nice diagram. Okay? So the dura mater, the arachnoid is in between, all right? And the innermost is this, the pia mater is very thin, very intimately connected to the brain. It's got lots of blood vessels and so forth, all right? And so the space beneath this, the arachnoid, is called the subarachnoid space. So up here is the epidural. Okay, that's where the medication is, and it's full with fat for obvious reasons, right? To cushion the spinal cord, okay? Because the spinal cord is inside of bone. Is that okay there? My good friend.
Yeah.
I saw the frown and I was like, wait a minute. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's going to be fat surrounding it, and that's the epidural space. All right. And under the arachnoid mater is going to be the subarachnoid space, and the subarachnoid space contains the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay. Subarachnoid. Sub means under the arachnoid. So the subarachnoid space is between the pia mater and the arachnoid. Okay, and the epidural space is between the dura mater and the periosteum, which is the membrane covering the outside of bone. Because sometimes in the exam I do ask about that. Where is the cerebrospinal fluid located? You know, that surrounds the central nervous system, because it continues with the brain too, and it's the one that cushions the brain from, you know, the skull. Okay, subarachnoid space. It's got CSF. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid, and that cushions together with the fat up in here in the epidural space. It cushions the spinal cord, right? And it will continue up at the brain too. All right, so you've got to know those spaces. So the epidural space is between the periosteum, which is the membrane covering the bone on the outside, and the dura mater, which is the outermost meninge. Okay? So I ask you to describe these things, you know what it is. Or I might say, okay, during some surgical procedures, you know, where is the anesthetic placed? You know, what structures is in between? Things like that, right? You know that, okay, the epidural space must be between the periosteum and dura mater, all right? And then, of course, the subarachnoid space, which contains the cerebrospinal fluid, is the between the pia mater and the arachnoid, all right? And that contains cerebrospinal fluid, which continues to the brain, all right? So you gotta know these meninges that cover and protect and support the brain. I mean, and the spinal cord in this case. Both of them. So you see what I was talking about earlier on. So what happens is that the spinal nerves that form out here. So see this is the intervertebral foramina, right? Is that when you stack them up, remember from the skeletal system, then there's little holes that come on the side along the length of the vertebral column. If you saw it articulated, you could go see it when you go back to the lab. You're gonna remind yourself. Through those little holes, the spinal nerves come out. Okay, but the spinal nerve originates on two spots on the spinal column. Okay, so this part here, which is you see, this is the spinous process. So this is towards the back, and the back is the dorsum. Dorsum means back. So this a part of the spinal nerve that originates from the back. It's called the dorsal root. Okay, and this one that's carrying sensory information to the, the nerves that go to the central nervous system. Okay, so it's going this way. Okay, I'm just gonna do it now so that you kind of get ahead of it. And then on the bottom, well, so you have the ventral root, which is the motor nerve, the one that's leading away from the central nervous system. Okay. Okay. All right. And the dorsal root has got a ganglion here, so that means it will synapse with another neuron. So there's a cell body and then another synapse that goes in there. All right. So when the ventral root and the dorsal root unite, that's when they form the spinal nerve. Okay. Because the spinal nerve will contain both sensory and motor. Okay. It will be a bundle of axons containing sensory axons and motor axons. Okay, going away. Okay, so by definition, really, the spinal nerve is the union of the dorsal and the ventral root, because the dorsal and the ventral root come together and then they form the spinal nerve. Okay, and the gray matter is located in the middle. Remember, gray matter. What did we say gray matter is? Anything that's not myelinated, which includes the cell bodies and the dendrites. So the cell bodies of these, neurons, the dorsal one that's coming up with the sensory information, those synapses right here in this space in the gray matter, and then they got these horns here, and we'll talk about what kind of function is in those horns. Okay, just in a little bit. But I want you to see this right now before we go further, so that you can visualize it when we start to talk about it. So the gray matter, this is the white matter here. Okay, so those are the tracts going up to the brain and tracts going down. So tracts going up to the brain are ascending tracts and descending tracts. Okay, your epidural space here. Okay, and it's got fat to cushion, and then subarachnoid space you want to see it because it's all together there, but that carries cerebrospinal fluid. All right. Okay, good. So, cross section of the spinal cord, like I was saying, the white matter is on the outside, okay, and then the gray matter is on the inside, okay, like we kind of saw. So you have something like this, and then you have. So the gray matter will be in the middle, and then you have the spinal cord, and then this bit, and there's a dorsal root here, ganglion, and then the spinal nerve will have both sensory and motor. Okay? So we're going to talk about these horns of the gray matter and talk about what. So this is the back, this is the dorsal, and this is the ventral.
Why is there no ventral root ganglion?
What's that?
There's no ventral root ganglion. Why is that?
Because those motor neurons, they synapse close to the organ they control. Okay. So because it takes two neurons to come from the body part to go to the brain, and another two neurons to come from the central nervous system to go to that organ. Okay. So the ones that on the motor part, on the ventral one, they synapse close to the organ, like the one that's controlling the liver. Okay, so this is the liver right here. It will come like that, and then synapse. So the post, ganglion, or the post ganglionic, or the second neuron, or the post synaptic neuron will be short, and this one is long because it starts from here. Okay, but the ones here, for the sensory one, the pre-synaptic neuron is much longer, and then the post one is synapse is right close to the end. So that's why. Okay. Very good question. Okay. So the white matter is on the outside, and the white matter will be containing those myelinated axons. Those will be the tracts going up, called ascending, and tracts going down, called descending. Okay, so the descending one will be carrying motor information because it's going down, and ascending, going up to the brain will be sensory. Right? So the gray matter is going to be wedged in the middle here. Okay, so this is the gray matter here. Oh, that is gray matter. And on the outside is the white matter carrying ascending and descending tracts. All right. Oh. My little thing is getting in the way, isn't it? Okay, get rid of some of it. I'm getting rid of the spinal nerve and the dorsal and the ventral root. Maybe I'll get a little bit of this one arm. Okay. But phonically, these are the columns here, or bigger columns that are arranged going up and down the, the spinal cord on the white matter. Okay, so the funicular are the bigger columns, and fasciculi are smaller columns. Okay, so little columns of nerve tracts, axons going up and down. Okay, so that's all that is. Okay, which consists of ascending and descending axons, and these are myelinated. That's why it's white matter on the outside. All right. So funiculus is singular. Funiculus. Funiculi is plural. Okay. Fasciculus with a US is singular. Is one of the smaller columns. Fasciculi is many, plural, because these are Latin words. All right. So those horns I was talking about, remember. So I was saying this is the dorsal horn, right? And there's another dorsal horn which I just erased over here. That dorsal horn, because it's coming in with the motor, with the sensory one, is going to carry sensory, sensory cell bodies that will synapse with an interneuron that will connect to another one. Okay. So the dorsal horn, because that's where the dorsal root coming in and it's carrying sensory information. So this is where the cell bodies for those sensory neurons will be located, right? And these sensory neurons normally come into the spinal cord like so, okay? And then you have a cell body like that. Sometimes in very less complicated reflexes, it will connect directly to the motor neuron. But before that, it will synapse with an interneuron, okay? Then the motor neuron on the bottom, on the ventral root, will then go to the organ, okay? So, and that's why all this is gray matter, because it's going to be having short axons and cell bodies, okay? So this dorsal horn carries sensory, neuron ganglia cell bodies, okay? That usually synapse with another interneuron, okay? That's what the dorsal horn. Remember I said the dorsal horn carries sensory information. So the ventral horns were the motor, okay? So they carry the motor neuron cell bodies, for the muscles. So somatic motor neuron cell bodies will be located here. So this is motor, this is sensory. So these two horns up here sensory, and up here is ventral, and it's motor, right? Remember? Because the ventral root carries motor information, okay? Because they come like this, and then they synapse an interneuron, and then a motor neuron goes out like that, and then the motor neuron and the sensory neuron will become the spinal nerve. You see what I'm saying? And this will be the spinal cord right here, okay? You see what I'm saying? So this is an interneuron that normally carries information from the sensory to the motor. Normally, that's what it is. Okay? But very few reflexes, I'll show you later on, they will synapse, the sensory and the motor will synapse together.
But only the dorsal synapses with the interneuron, right?
Well, the dorsal synapses with the interneuron up here, and then that interneuron will take the information to the motor neuron too. Okay, and I'll show you nice pictures later on of that. But I want you to sort of think about it and visualize it. So the lateral horn kind of carries autonomic motor. So the cell bodies, remember I was saying the kind of reflexes that we have, we've got somatic ones that control muscles and the autonomic ones that control usually the viscera, things that are automatically controlled, like your heart, like your digestive system, So all those that are automatically controlled, the cell bodies of it, autonomic motor neurons starting the lateral horns. So that's the lateral horn. Lateral because it's on the sides. Okay? So the dorsal horns carrying the sensory cell bodies for the sensory neurons, the ventral horns carrying motor neurons for somatic, motor neuron cell bodies for the muscles, for the somatic, all right, skeletal muscles, and then of course the lateral ones carry the motor neurons for autonomic, autonomic nervous system neurons, right? Cell bodies starting there, and then the gray matter and the white matter are joined by what are called commissures, all right. Remember when we talked about the anterior commissure and so forth that join the two sides of the brain? So commissure is a word that shows joining together. Okay, like communicate, commissure is joining. So the gray and the white matter from this half and that half, they are connected by these tracts. Okay, between the two. All right. So I want you to know these dorsal horns, where the cell body, what kind of cell bodies are located in each of those. Dorsal, lateral, and ventral horns. Okay? Again, here we go. So now you can actually see, so this is the dorsal root, right, with the dorsal ganglion. So it comes here, and then it synapses with another one. Another thing is that these spinal nerves, they don't originate from this spinal cord. It's just one, tract. They have rootlets. So it's like a few rootlets would join together to form the ventral root. A few rootlets would join together to form the ventral root and the dorsal root. Okay, so that's why you see these little lines. So this one will come in, and then it will. You see, this is the dorsal horn, and this neuron will synapse with an interneuron, and then a motor neuron will then synapse with it going down here. Okay? See that? This is motor, this is sensory. And in between them, there's a neuron, interneuron for the most part. They are very simple reflexes where this blue one synapses directly with the red one, with the sensory one. Okay? And I'll show you those examples. Like the stretch reflexes like that. Alright? So that's that. Alright? And then they unite to form the nerve, spinal nerve, the red and blue. Alright? So like I was saying, those ventral and dorsal roots, they don't just come as one strand, they have rootlets. So kind of sort of connecting a big part of the, a reasonable area of it. And then that becomes the, when we dissect the brain, we'll be able to see that. See? Like that. So those rootlets come and then forms the spinal nerve, like that. And this will be the wall of the spinal cord. Kind of sort of puts it in a wide area of the spinal cord, rather than if it was just coming in as one strand. See what I'm saying? So it is a little bit of a wider area. And then of course the rootlets combine. The rootlets will then combine to form the ventral root, and then the ventral root will combine with the dorsal root to form the spinal. So rootlets, dorsal, ventral, and then the ventral and dorsal join to form the spinal nerve. Right? So know about the rootlets. Okay? So these are them. You can see these are the dorsal rootlets. You're looking at the back. So this is looking from the back like that. You're looking from the back. So you can see these rootlets. This is in an actual, cadaver. So this is good. The ventral rootlets are kind of obscured by these dorsal rootlets. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're too small. Okay, it just means they're obscured, and because they're behind, right? So those are the rootlets, and the rootlets become the ventral and the dorsal root, and the dorsal root and the ventral root unite to form the spinal nerve. So you see what I'm saying? I like these pictures because they kind of sort of highlight each part so you can see yourself. You see what I'm saying? This will be the dorsal root, okay? And then this is the dorsal root ganglion, because again, the neuron coming in will sit up just outside of the spinal cord, and then a very short neuron will take the information into the spinal cord. And then usually that will synapse with another interneuron. Interneuron is one that's between two neurons, like the name says, right? And then you can see the rootlets as well. See the rootlets for the ventral horn, and then the rootlets for the dorsal horn over there. And then this is, of course, the ventral root. Again, the ventral root, it's in a four-legged animal like this. This is ventral. In a bipedal animal like us, it's going to be anterior. Okay, so that's another name for the ventral root. Okay, and then the dorsal, which is dorsum back, is going to be the posterior, right? So sometimes those names are used interchangeably. Posterior root is the same thing.
Which one we use?
What's that?
Do you care which one we use?
I don't really care, but for the most part, dorsal and ventral are the ones that are used in reference to a quadrupedal animal with four legs. All right, but you know, if you use dorsal and ventral, then you know the dorsal root ganglion and so forth. Okay, you could call it posterior root ganglion, but for the most part, dorsal and ventral are used. Okay, just so you know. Anyway, so the dorsal and ventral root. So this will be the rootlets will join, and then will form the dorsal root, and then of course the ventral root over there after a union of the rootlets, and then the dorsal root and the ventral root will combine to form a bundle covered by connective tissue of a spinal nerve. So a spinal nerve is usually called, they are all mixed. They carry sensory information to the CNS and motor information to the muscles and glands. So they are mixed nerves, they're all mixed. All right? And then, of course, the dorsal root ganglion, because on the sensory part, they will synapse right outside of the spinal cord with another neuron. So therefore, there's going to be a cell body right outside. It's called the dorsal root ganglion. Again, you see that rootlets, ventral, dorsal root, then spinal nerve. Okay? And remember, we said the gray matter is flanked by the columns of white matter. We said the big columns are called funiculi, or funiculars for one, and then the fasciculi are the smaller bundles. Okay? These are the dorsal and ascending and descending tracts will then final edit of the spinal cord reflexes. Okay, from the brain, because the information is sent to the brain via the ascending tracts, and then the descending tracts will come and give the final instructions to modify the reflex, which can be accentuated or it could be reduced a little bit. Okay, because of these columns. And these columns are named just for the location. Okay, like this is sort of anterior lateral. Okay, and this is the lateral tract, and then these are the kind of like dorsal tracts and so forth. Okay, and these are ventral tracts and whatnot. Okay, so the pink ones are descending, so motor information, and ascending, carrying sensory information to the brain. Right. So now, you see what I was saying? Now this is the nice diagram that shows the dorsal root, okay, contains the sensory axons, okay? So this is information going this way, okay? And then just before it gets into the spinal cord, that sensory will synapse with another neuron, which forms the dorsal root ganglion. All right? And then when it goes in here, you see, this is the dorsal horn, right? Which we say carries the sensory neuron cell bodies. That's why it's gray matter. So the gray matter is wedged in the middle. And then, of course, it will have the interneuron cell bodies too. So these sensory neurons will synapse with an interneuron for the most part. So that's why they say interneuron. The black one is between these two neurons. And the purple one will be the motor one, carrying information away to the muscles and the nerves. Okay? So that's where you have the somatic neuron cell bodies in the ventral horn. See here? So this somatic, okay, motor, okay, and then in the horn here, it will be sensory cell bodies that synapse with an interneuron for the most part. Okay? Remember those lateral horns I talked about? You see this one? This lateral horn? This is one that carries autonomic motor cell bodies. You see what I'm saying? The autonomic motor cell bodies controls things like the blood vessels, the smooth muscle, okay? The smooth muscle in the GIT, gastrointestinal tract, okay? And these ones control skeletal muscles like the thigh muscles, leg muscles, biceps, and so forth. And those are in the ventral horns. Because normally in the exam I could say, okay, what kind of, neuron cell bodies are located in the ventral, in the dorsal horns, the lateral horns. Okay, the lateral horns will be the autonomic motor, right? Okay, and there's gray matter right there. And the central canal also has cerebrospinal fluid in it. All right. So, motor, sensory, spinal nerve. Union of the dorsal and ventral root is the spinal nerve. That's the definition for it. Alright. So the ventral root has motor neurons and the dorsal root has sensory neurons. And then the union of the dorsal and the sensory dorsal and the motor ventral is what is called the spinal nerve. So in the exam, I may say, can you define a spinal nerve? And then you just say, it's the union of the ventral and the dorsal root. Okay, which is that. Okay. All right, so now we go to reflexes. We'll talk about a few examples and what their purpose is. Okay, now we know how all these neurons are arranged in the spinal cord and all those tracts going up and down from the brain. Okay, the descending and ascending tracts. So reflex is something that occurs automatically. It's a stereotypic, kind of sort of simplified and well-structured, well-known sequence of events that occur in those neurons that control glands and things like that, viscera, soft internal organs automatically, without you actually thinking about it. It's not voluntary. Okay. Such as if I was to step on a tack with my barefoot or broken glass, immediately I'll feel the pain and I'll lift that leg up. Okay? And that would be a somatic reflex because it involves some muscles, skeletal muscles. Okay? They're involuntary, you don't have to think about it. So, you should know how to define a reflex. Okay? It's an automatic sequence of events set up by the nervous system that control these body parts, right, automatically without any input from the individual, right? And in the maintain homeostasis, which is everything in the body is geared to maintain homeostasis, okay, to maintain a stable internal environment, right? That's what the reflex is about. So if there's a stimuli that's changing the internal environment, whether it be a painful stimuli or anything like that, you want to remove yourself from that painful stimuli, and therefore maintain homeostasis. Okay, so to limit the tissue damage. Like I was saying, we get two types of these reflexes. The ones that control skeletal muscles, okay, called the somatic reflexes, and the one that control mostly viscera, like blood vessels, the heart, the digestive system. All those things are automatically controlled. So the autonomic reflexes. Okay, like when you eat a meal, you start to secrete digestive juices, and you start to mix that in your small intestine, your stomach, and so forth. All that is happening automatically. You don't have to think about, oh, I'm going to make my stomach contract now. You know what I'm saying? Because then you go nuts having to think about all those things. So, the beauty of reflexes comes in. You can concentrate on other things, maybe watch a movie while you're digesting, you know what I'm saying? Or you're eating your popcorn. Okay? So that's the thing. These ones will carry out work that, so you don't have to do it. And it's automatic. Anything that's from the autonomic nervous system. So if I was to say, can you give me an example of an autonomic reflex? Then things like controlling blood pressure, digestive functions, all those things, water intake, all those things, that are automatically controlled. Like even the smooth muscle in the respiratory system, oxygen intake, carbon dioxide, okay, and so forth. So all that, and then the somatic ones are usually involved with muscles removing a body from a painful stimuli. Like I step on a tap, boom, and I remove my leg immediately. It's very instantaneous. Okay, to limit tissue damage, because if I keep stepping on that tap, it's going to continue to go in and continue to damage tissue, more tissue. That would suck. So to limit that damage, yeah, it would really. Besides that, it's very painful. I would have to remove my leg, and I maintain homeostasis like that. So remove body from stimuli. Right now, I'm, the stretch reflex is happening automatically right now as I stand. And the stretch reflex kind of stretches my leg like this so that it's straight. Otherwise, I'm not buckling down and falling. See what I'm saying? And I'll show you the stretch reflex. So, because if I was to buckle down and fall, I'll hit my head. That's going to affect my homeostasis. It's going to be painful and it's going to hit my brain and so. Okay? So, causes movement of external. Yeah, you help me out a little bit, but I'll be suffering in the meantime. If I was to come and nudge you, or kind of punch you, which I wouldn't do, then usually the person will go the other way, right? You never get punched this way and you fall that way. No. You always get punched and you go this way. So that's that movement. It's a reflex action. When somebody punches you and the force that's coming from the front of you, you will go backwards. You kind of sort of, move away from that. So it's a movement from external forces. Okay? So you know what this is involved in, somatic skeletal muscles, and you know that anything that's automatically controlled will be an autonomic reflex. Because I want you to know these general types and be able to give me some examples of each. Right? And it kind of makes sense. This is not so hard.
Would a somatic reflex also be if someone scares you around the corner and you're...
Yeah, that's external stimuli. And that external stimuli is sound. It could be touch. I could come in, how you like to do somebody like this. And then you touch the knee and you go that way, and then they look and they say, no, they think it's a ghost, that kind of thing. Okay, it's all external. They come and they go to, So anything from external, it could be sound, it could be touch, it could be a physical force, anything. And it involves muscles. It involves you doing something with your skeletal muscles. Okay, and this one is anything automatic, so think blood vessels, think digestive system, think all that. So it should be easy to give. So we've seen this before, right? This is a homeostatic mechanism. Remember we said reflexes maintain homeostasis. So go back to the same information we talked about when we did homeostasis right at the beginning. So this is nothing new. We talked about it. You need something that receives the information, which is a receptor that is sensitive to any external stimuli, whether it's sound or temperature or pain or all those things. All right, and then you need to send it to the central nervous system, right? Then you need a sensory neuron for that. Okay? Remember with the dorsal root and the dorsal root ganglion takes the information to the spinal cord and the brain. All right? Then inside of the brain and inside of the spinal cord, you have neurons. Remember that neuron that is between the sensory and the motor, which we are calling interneuron because it's between two neurons. That's what I'm saying. It's between two neurons. So that is the neuron that kind of processes the information before you give a final response. Okay? And the interneuron in the spinal cord sometimes sends the information to the brain via those ascending tracts. And then the brain will make a final decision. Oh, okay, this is that. So we need to make this more, strong, or whatever it is, or we need to weaken this reflex. Then the brain sends down information via the descending tracts, and we will edit that information, and then finally the motor neuron will take it to the whatever gland or muscle or whatever it is that needs to do the action. Okay? So that's that. So this is that integration part of the brain, making sense of it and creating a response, a calculated response, which is then conducted by the motor neurons to go down to whatever, the muscle or the small intestine or the big toe, whatever needs to do the job. All right? And then whatever is doing the job, we know that it's the effector organ. If it's a skeletal muscle, if it's your leg muscle, or if it's your blood vessel, whatever it is, that's going to contract or do whatever, or if it's a gland that's going to secrete a hormone or whatever, that's an effector organ. Okay. So this is basically the homeostatic mechanism which we've done many times. Homeostatic mechanism. Okay, good. So you know about that. Nothing new there. So a reflex arc simply includes those receptors, right? And the sensory neuron taking the information to the spinal cord, and that interneuron that connects the sensory and the motor. And then the motor neuron takes it back to the effectors. That's a reflex arc. Okay? It usually involves interneurons. Okay? There are some reflex arcs that don't have this, like simple stretch reflex. Okay? So you got receptors, just those 5 things we mentioned, and then the sensory neuron, also the ganglion, and then these interneurons will do the integration and so forth. Sending some information to the brain, comes back, and then you give the final instructions to the motor neuron, and then it will conduct it to the effector organs. Okay, so that's a reflex arc. Okay, all those components that involve it. What's that?
My 5-point question right there.
Yeah, 5 point, just like those homeostatic mechanism stuff, then I can think of something fancy to give you a bonus, so I can hook you up with a bonus. So I give you 2 more questions. Okay, so we talked about how all these things are arranged, right? Remember last time we talked about, it was in the exam too, for one of the bonus questions. I asked about how these neurons are arranged. Some of the neurons, they come and gang up on one. That's a conversion. This happens with the reflexes too, okay? And some of them, one comes and then gangs up on many, and then diverges. That happens on these reflexes too, okay? You see how they're coming in here? This is the site of divergence. Here, you see how it diverges and splits into 2. One is supplying this ascending tract to the brain, because that information has got to go to the brain, because the brain is the final say with this thing, okay? The brain will say, okay, we need to do this, we need to maybe reduce this, or we need to maybe increase the response. And that's what the brain does. And then the information comes back down again, okay? And here you can see it's a site of convergence. Here again, you've got this one and that one coming in together. These 2, the green and the black, coming here, and here the green going to this black one and this black one, and then divergence. Okay, so we know about this already, right? Because we did it last time. We know about that. So those divergent and convergent pathways will give final edit to our reflex, so that we produce a good response. Okay. Checks and balances is always good, like our government, right? Right now we just voted a bunch of Republicans in there. Now we're going to have just one side. I like the way this thing works. You're supposed to have many different ideas so that you have people from different, that's what these interneurons and convergence and divergence, so that you have many different parts controlling checks and balances. If you have one person doing the whole deal, like if you had one president who was deciding everything, my God, we would be stuck. You know, and because then there's only one input. So you need many inputs. That's why you have the divergent and you have this convergent pathway. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. And so, like I said, those reflexes are integrated by the brain, which gives the final instructions on what kind of response we need to have. Okay? All right. So those higher brain centers could either accentuate or reduce the response that reflects. Right? So if I ask about the purpose of having all these divergent and convergent pathways, synapsing with all these reflexes, you know what to say, right? Because it gives the final edit and it has input from many different parts of the brain, so you can produce a good response. Okay? So we start with the stretch reflex. The stretch reflex is the simplest. Why? Because look what I was saying earlier on. You got the sensory receptors over here for the stretch reflex. The specialized receptor for the stretch reflex. You know, when you're stretching something, you're pulling it like this. Okay? You have, in this case, you're stretching the muscle. Okay? When you stretch the muscle and it's being stretched, there are certain receptors or muscle fibers, about 3 to 10 of them, okay, that have, you see this part here, the green part of it, doesn't contract. It's not elastic, okay? And the last bit of it, that's what contracts, okay? So that when this muscle is being stretched, it's called a muscle spindle. That's the receptor. Remember, we said for a reflex, you need a receptor, you need a sensory neuron. This is the kind of receptor for a stretch reflex, and it's located in the muscle. When the muscle is being stretched, this receptor will sense it. It's called a muscle spindle, okay? And the muscle spindle is just specialized muscle fibers that have a non-contractile center, and only the ends will contract. So that when it's being pulled apart, the non-contractile center will be yanked, and it won't, you know, it's not elastic, so it will feel the stretch, okay? And then so this will then cause the muscle to contract to oppose the stretch.
So it keeps it from overstretching, right?
Yeah, it keeps it from overstretching, from pulling it too far apart. Okay? And the patellar reflex is a good example of that. You know, if you're sitting on the table and you go to the doctor, they want to check your reflexes, they sit you up and then they go. I even did it myself. But you see, what happens is that when this quadricep muscle is stretched, it will contract reflexively so that it doesn't stretch too much. And then when it contracts, it pulls the knee up like that. So that's the stretch reflex. And it's the simplest reflex. Why? Because you've got a motor neuron sensory neuron coming in. And guess what? It synapses directly with the motor neuron. There's no interneuron here.
So then does that apply when you like hyperextend the muscle? If you pull the muscle because you overextended it? Or does it not use this mechanism?
You have stretched it like it.
Like if you stretch it too far?
Yeah, if you stretch it, you can't really stretch it too far because the knee locks right up here.
Oh.
You know, but if you really pull on your muscle too much, like here, you know, so that's why when you're stretching, you go like this, and you're pulling on this, you're stretching this. Okay, but if you do it reflexively by beating that, it automatically just contracts. So that's why your knee kicks up. Your foot. Okay? So, and the receptor is a muscle spindle, not your knee. Okay? And your sensory and your motor neuron. It synapses directly with the motor neuron. So it's the simplest reflex, stretch reflex. It prevents your muscles from being overstretched, so it will cause the muscle to contract. Okay? So I want you to know for each reflex the kind of receptor that's involved and what it does. Okay? Stretch reflex will, pretty much contracts the muscle when the muscle is stretched. When you, yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when we were doing the Learn Smarts, there was a question about simplest reflex, and it was withdrawal.
The withdrawal reflex, was it withdrawal?
Yeah.
Okay. The withdrawal normally comes with another reflex. Usually, if you're withdrawing one leg, but if you're standing on both legs, that is, okay, and then it comes with another one. So it will have a bunch of interneurons, but maybe just the withdrawing part may be simple, and I'll show you, because I think I'll only show you the withdrawal reflex, and it doesn't have an interneuron in between. The part controlling the withdrawal only. But normally when you withdraw, it normally comes with extension on the other leg. Like if I was to step on a tuck right now, and I'm stepping on both legs, I would have to withdraw one leg, but guess what I have to do with the other one? I have to extend it, because then it will maintain my body weight. And that's what's called the closed extensor reflex. I don't have it here.
So just the withdrawal part?
Just the withdrawal part would be the simple part. But, I don't want to use that as a simple, because it usually comes with another one. But I don't have it here. Next time I think I'll put that crossed extensor reflex, it's called. Because it will be a withdrawal on one side and an extension on the other. Okay? So now we're doing the Golgi tendon body. The Golgi tendon organ is a receptor that is located in the tendon this time. Golgi tendon organs, we know about these ones. We did it last time when we did all those receptors for proprioception. Remember? Yeah. This is not new, guys. So when your muscle is contracting, it's going to be pulling very hard on the tendon. So that it will prevent you from lifting too much weight. Because if you're trying to lift too much weight and it's really pulling, the tendon could break off from the bone. Okay, so there are stretch receptors in the tendon that will prevent that by relaxing the muscle. Right? So if you're really pulling too hard and the tendon is really pulling on the bone, the Golgi tendon organ, which is the receptor for this reflex, will relax the muscle. So that it doesn't pull too much. Because eventually you break it from the bone, and that's a hard thing to repair. When you tear a muscle from the bone and tendon, which you can imagine. So this is just the opposite of the stretch reflex. See what I'm saying? So the Golgi tendon is not a simple reflex. Why? Because we have an interneuron in the middle. See what I'm saying? So this will prevent a muscle that's contracting from pulling too hard, on the muscle, and then it will relax. Okay. For each reflex, know the receptor and the purpose of that reflex. Okay. And then the rest is the same. So it will cause the muscle to relax, so that to relieve that tension. So it's pulling too much. Okay. The withdrawal reflex. You see what I was saying? It's not really simple. You see what I'm saying? Because even the withdrawal part is getting an extraterritorial interneuron.
So you can challenge them on there if they're wrong.
Yeah, sometimes I do challenge a bunch of them, and they're always sending me like the questions when I'm putting in multiple choice questions. I see something that are wrong, and I send them an email. They should employ me. They should give me some money. Because I'm tired of doing that. Because I tell them that, okay, so withdrawal reflex is to remove a body part from pain. It's a somatic reflex, right? So what it will do, it will cause the hamstrings to contract to pull the leg away. Okay, so the tuck will go into your pain receptors, nociceptors, will send the information here, boom, boom, boom. Via the sensory, it will synapse with an interneuron, and then it's excitatory because it's going to cause the muscle to contract. Whatever muscle is going to pull away from harm, that's what's going to contract. And then, and this muscle happens to be the hamstring, because the hamstring is contracting to pull your leg out. Okay, so withdrawal reflex is to limit tissue damage. What kind of receptor do we have here? Nociceptor, if you want to be fancy. Okay, but you can just call it a pain receptor, okay? So that's simple. Okay, pain receptor. We can call them nociceptors if you like. So that's for the withdrawal reflex. Okay, and you know what it's for? To limit tissue damage. Okay? And you know what the other functions of the other two are, right? We talked about it. Okay, because I'm going to ask about that. give you the reflex, give me the function, give me the receptor. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. These guys are waiting outside as if we are late. We're 5 minutes early. It was kind of throwing me off a little. So thank you, guys.